17 Overrated Historical Icons According to Online Opinions. History, as they say, is written by the victors. However, the internet has given a voice to the dissenters, skeptics, and revisionists. While some historical figures wallow in the adoration of generations, others find themselves under the ruthless glare of online scrutiny, their once admired reputations tainted by a chorus of digital disapproval. This isn't about erasing the past or condemning individuals based on modern standards. It's about peering beyond the polished statues and typical textbook narratives to understand the complexities of these figures and the controversies that swirl around them. We'll probe into the reasons behind the online disdain for these individuals, separating fact from fiction, and exploring the nuances that make them so dividing. Christopher Columbus. Hailed as a daring explorer and credited with discovering America, Columbus's legacy has been increasingly marred by accusations of brutality towards indigenous populations. The internet is rife with discussions of his role in the colonization of the Americas, which led to the displacement, enslavement, and death of countless indigenous people. While some argue that Columbus should be judged by the standards of his time, others contend that his actions were despicable even by 15th-century standards. The debate rages on, with calls to remove his statues and monuments gaining momentum, reflecting a growing awareness of the darker side of his expeditions. Winston Churchill. The British Bulldog, revered for his wartime leadership during World War II, isn't immune to criticism in the digital age. Online discussions often focus on his controversial views on race and colonialism, including his support for policies that led to famine in India and his derogatory remarks about non-European cultures. While his defenders emphasize his pivotal role in defeating Nazi Germany, his detractors argue that his legacy is tainted by his racist and imperialist views. The internet has amplified these criticisms, sparking a reassessment of Churchill's place in history and prompting a more nuanced understanding of his complex character. Thomas Jefferson. The principal author of the Declaration of Independence and a champion of liberty and democracy, Jefferson is also remembered for his ownership of slaves, a glaring contradiction that has fueled much debate online. The internet has facilitated a deeper examination of Jefferson's views on race and slavery, revealing the hypocrisy inherent in his words and actions. While his intellectual contributions to American democracy are undeniable, his ownership of human beings and his views on racial inferiority have tarnished his image in the eyes of many modern observers. Andrew Jackson. Old Hickory, the 7th President of the United States, is often criticized online for his policy of Indian removal, which resulted in the forced displacement of thousands of Native Americans from their ancestral lands. The Trail of Tears, a tragic episode in American history, is a stark reminder of the human cost of Jackson's policies. While some argue that Jackson was a man of his time, others condemn his actions as morally disgraceful. The internet has provided a platform for indigenous voices to share their perspectives on Jackson's legacy, leading to a more critical and empathetic understanding of this dark chapter in American history. Napoleon Bonaparte. The French emperor's military genius and political cleverness are undeniable, but his conquests also led to widespread death and suffering across Europe. Online discussions often focus on the human cost of his wars, the authoritarian nature of his rule, and his questionable treatment of women. While some view Napoleon as a visionary leader who modernized France, others see him as a ruthless dictator who sacrificed countless lives for his own ambition. The internet has provided a forum for these contrasting viewpoints to clash, leading to a more nuanced understanding of Napoleon's complex legacy. Henry Ford. The man who put the world on wheels with his Model T and revolutionized manufacturing with the assembly line is not without his critics. Online forums buzz with discussions of Ford's anti-Semitism, his admiration for Adolf Hitler, and his opposition to labor unions. While his contributions to the automotive industry and modern manufacturing are undeniable, his personal views and actions have cast a shadow over his legacy. The internet has amplified these criticisms, prompting a reassessment of Ford's place in history and the impact of his personal beliefs on his business practices. John D. Rockefeller. Rockefeller, the founder of Standard Oil and one of the wealthiest men in history, is a controversial figure whose legacy is often debated online. He is praised for his philanthropy and business capabilities but criticized for his ruthless tactics when building his oil empire. Accusations of monopolistic practices, exploitation of workers, and environmental damage have fueled online discussions about Rockefeller's impact on society. While some view him as a capitalist visionary, others see him as a robber tycoon who amassed wealth at the expense of others. The internet has provided a platform for these contrasting perspectives to collide, making Rockefeller a lightning rod for debate. Woodrow Wilson. The 28th President of the United States, Wilson led the country through World War I and championed the League of Nations. However, his legacy is marred by his racist views and policies, including the segregation of the federal government. Online discussions often highlight Wilson's support for white supremacy and his opposition to women's suffrage. While some argue that he should be judged by the standards of his time, others condemn his actions as morally deplorable. The internet has amplified these criticisms, leading to a reassessment of Wilson's place in history and the impact of his views on American society. Elizabeth I. The Virgin Queen was celebrated for her political savviness and cultural patronage but is not without her detractors online. Her reign was marked by religious persecution of Catholics and the brutal suppression of Irish rebellions. While her supporters emphasize her role in establishing England as a major European power, her critics point to the human cost of her policies. The internet has provided a platform for these opposing viewpoints to clash, leading to a more nuanced understanding of Elizabeth's complex legacy. Hernán Cortés. The Spanish conquistador who conquered the Aztec Empire is often reprimanded online for his brutality towards indigenous populations and his role in the destruction of their civilization. While some argue that Cortés was a product of his time, others view him as a ruthless conqueror who exploited and enslaved indigenous people. The internet has amplified these criticisms, prompting a re-evaluation of Cortés's legacy and the impact of Spanish colonialism on the Americas. Cecil Rhodes. The British imperialist and diamond magnate is a controversial figure whose legacy is fiercely debated online. He is praised for his contributions to education and infrastructure in southern Africa but blasted for his racist views and policies. Rhodes' belief in white supremacy and his role in the exploitation of African resources have led to widespread criticism of his legacy. The internet has intensified these criticisms, leading to calls for the removal of his statues and monuments, and a reassessment of his place in history. Che Guevara. The iconic revolutionary figure, immortalized on countless posters and t-shirts, is both revered and reviled on the internet. His supporters admire his commitment to social justice and his fight against imperialism, while his critics condemn his authoritarian tendencies and his role in human rights abuses. Guevara's involvement in executions and his support for violent revolution have led to heated debates about his legacy. The internet has escalated these controversies, with some hailing him as a hero and others denouncing him as a villain. The truth, as often is the case, lies somewhere in between. Walt Disney. The creator of Mickey Mouse and the visionary behind Disneyland is not immune to online criticism. Accusations of anti-Semitism, sexism, and questionable labor practices have surfaced in online discussions, challenging the idealized image of Disney as a benevolent entertainer. While his contributions to animation and entertainment are undeniable, his personal views and business practices have sparked debate. The internet has provided a platform for these criticisms to be aired, leading to a more critical examination of Disney's legacy and the impact of his work on popular culture. Queen Victoria. The Empress of India and the longest reigning British monarch, Queen Victoria's reign was a time of great social and economic change. However, her legacy is not without controversy, with online discussions often focusing on the negative impacts of British colonialism during her reign. While some admire her for her leadership and the cultural achievements of the Victorian era, others criticize her for the exploitation and oppression of colonized peoples. The internet has augmented these criticisms, leading to a reassessment of Victoria's legacy and the impact of British imperialism on the world. Karl Marx. The philosopher and economist whose ideas inspired communist revolutions around the world is a polarizing figure on the internet. His supporters praise his critique of capitalism and his vision of a classless society, while his critics blame him for the atrocities committed in the name of communism. Online discussions often delve into the merits and flaws of Marx's economic theories, the historical context of his writings, and the unintended consequences of his ideas. While some see him as a visionary thinker who exposed the inherent contradictions of capitalism, others view him as a dangerous advocate whose theories led to oppression and violence. Ayn Rand, the novelist and philosopher who championed individualism and laissez-faire capitalism, is a lightning rod for controversy on the internet. Her admirers hail her as a defender of liberty and a champion of reason, while her detractors criticize her philosophy as selfish and elitist. Rand's objectivism, with its emphasis on rational self-interest and its rejection of altruism, has sparked heated debates online. Her novels, particularly Atlas Shrugged, have been both praised for their powerful storytelling and condemned for their promotion of a narrow worldview. The internet has provided a forum for these passionate discussions, making Rand a figure of both admiration and scorn. George Washington, the revered founding father and first president of the United States, Washington's legacy has not escaped scrutiny on the internet. While applauded for his leadership during the American Revolution and his role in establishing the nation, his ownership of slaves has become a focal point of criticism. The internet has amplified discussions about the contradiction between Washington's fight for liberty and his participation in the institution of slavery. Some argue that his actions should be viewed within the context of his time, while others believe that his slaveholding tarnishes his otherwise exemplary reputation.